All right, some commitments made by the IEC on when the country will know the results of the local government elections. We take you back to the Rock Centre now, where Vuyo Mvoko is standing by. I know, Vuyo, you and Francis at some point will be looking at the trending hashtags with regards to social media. From my side, I suppose that's it. We'll leave it with you.
Thanks, Tapiso. Indeed, we are going to be taking everyone through the latest numbers, as well, of course, as what is being said on social media. But what we'll also be doing is to speak to somebody who has been involved in an initiative that's meant to, really bring some sanity and order in what has become a chaotic way of managing coalitions in this country, especially after 2016, when about 4 metros were hung and had to be run via coalitions. And that game has had no rules whatsoever, even though we've had coalitions since the 90s, actually. But in 2016, it was the first time that the largest and richest metropolitan municipalities were subjected to coalition arrangements, and it's been a disaster in the great majority of cases. So Lance Joel from SALGA is going to take us through what they are putting on the table. This time it's just something to discuss. They are going to canvass it with political parties. They are going to get some of their suggestions from the lessons that these political parties have learned over the past 5 years. After that, we're going to bring some of the political parties into the discussion to hear what they think of the proposals that are being contemplated, which one day may just make it into legislation that will guide the running, management, even the putting together of coalitions in this country. Let's welcome then Lance Joel from SALGA. Lance, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Just take us through very briefly what you guys have done, what you have put together, to what end.
Well, good evening to you, Vuyo, and as well as the viewers of SABC. Indeed, we are approaching very interesting times in our democracy. But we felt that it's important for us to draw lessons from the last 5 years, particularly as it relates to coalition governments. And as such, as SALGA, we have worked with the Dula Omar Institute at the University of Western Cape to look at developing some sort of framework that would assist political parties as a guiding document, not only during the formation of coalition governments, but also as a guiding document to ensure that that coalition government is sustained over a defined period. The reality is that the problem statement we have been faced with in particular the last 5 years, is that coalition governments have been very unstable, and that instability has resulted in negatively the delivery of services across communities in those particular municipalities. So in developing this guiding document, we thought that attention must be drawn to many of the pitfalls that finds expression during the negotiation stage. That's probably the most critical stage. In your earlier conversation with analysts, we are picking up that coalition discussions have already taken place. And the unfortunate reality is that those discussions are taking place based on how the parties themselves make up the rules. So there's no model that's being followed. There is no set way of doing it. And for us, that is the unfortunate part of it. So we are hoping that through this framework that we have released, will guide parties. And what is it that we would want to guide them on? And the starting point is really that it would be important that we do not start with the numbers, Vuyo. Do not start with the numbers. Start with a reflection of what political parties have to offer vis-a-vis what your election manifesto has promised to communities. And based on that, then see what are the areas of alignment between your political party and the other political parties that will be part of this council formation. And based on that, then get a sense of whether there are areas of commonality. Because in the absence of commonality in the manifesto promises is inordinately going to result in instability, because there is no foundation for a coalition. You'll be running at opposite ends as coalition partners. So agreeing on a menu to take forward as a coalition government is critical to laying the foundation. The second part is to be as transparent as possible throughout the conversations, but also ultimately when there is agreement amongst coalition partners, is also to go public and let the electorate know how you intend governing that particular municipality and what would be your key areas of focus over the term of office as that coalition government. But also importantly, there are areas we are specifically saying to political parties, do not negotiate around matters such as the appointment of senior managers. Do not negotiate around procurement-related matters, because those matters fall outside of the scope of the political parties themselves. They are clearly administrative matters and should be left to be dealt with administratively. And we have seen over the last 5 years, as this framework shows, that where those were key considerations to make a deal for coalition partnership, it has ultimately resulted in the collapse of that particular partnership. So we have asked specifically political parties steer away from those particular matters. So there's a nice framing of issues to guide political parties across the board. And it would be useful if political parties use this as a basis during the formation of coalitions. I should also make a point that was raised earlier, Vuyo, because it will come out during the coalition discussions. Who initiates the discussions, the coalition discussions? We agree with the view that was meant in an earlier conversation with the Prof that says perhaps the party that has garnered the highest number of seats should lead the first early stages of the coalition negotiations. We are not saying that simply. There is a lot of work that the Dula Omar Institute has done that confirms, in fact, in international mature democracies, that is the approach that is being taken in the Netherlands, in Belgium. Those are the approaches that are taken to initiate conversation. So it is not unknown. It is well known outside of the borders of South Africa, in democracies where coalitions have become the order of the day. And why are we saying let's introduce a guiding framework such as this? Is so that we bring some sort of rules to the game, so that it is not a free-for-all. It is more controlled, it is more regulated, so that indeed we respect those arrangements. And those arrangements would differ across provinces because of the different political parties that would have garnered higher percentages of support through the elections.
Okay.
So we are saying those are key things to look out for.
Okay, a couple of quick ones before I let you go, Lance. I mean, things like appointments or agreements around, the appointment of senior managers and, negotiating around, procurements, never happen above board, because those people know for a fact that, they should steer clear of such things. But nothing stops them from doing it anyway. So are you making any suggestions, proposals around how to stop that? In other words, the underhanded way in which these things have been handled in any case?
We are mindful of the fact that despite a lot of guidance that comes, parties may in any way elect to look the other way. But the reality is that if you would want to make those critical areas that will make you cooperate, it is a dangerous space to be in, because it ultimately leads to that particular coalition formation not complying with the legislative prescripts. And that is the wrong footing to start off on to try and govern a municipality. But what we've also done is we have said, once you have agreed on the areas of cooperation, the deal-breaking issues, it may be necessary to seek advice on whether those issues that you have agreed on are indeed issues that would be implementable and do not necessarily fall outside of the scope, the legislative scope of local government. Because what we have seen as well is where those areas indeed fall outside of the scope, they become areas that create conflict within coalitions because they are not being implemented. And the reason why they're not being implemented is that the law does not allow. And so we are saying, let's counter against those, because what we are ultimately trying to avoid is a quick discussion about a coalition, but has a long-term negative effect on governance in a municipality. So let's do it right.
That's why we're going to leave it, and that's why we're going to leave it for now. Lance, thank you very much for your time. He is, of course, the COO of the South African Local Government Association. They have put together a framework that they believe is going to help parties navigate the putting together, but also the management of coalitions, given the reality we are facing right now, which is that we are, after this election, we're going to have more hung municipalities in the country than we have ever had. And given the experience of the past 5 years, in particular, that experience has not been good for political parties, it has not been good for the people. It is meant to actually help serve. Joining us now are two political parties that are going to be integral in the management, or in fact starting with the negotiation of coalitions all the way to how